Hello, friends. This is our second program, and we are beginning with the third ray, the direction of the third ray in the Law of Repulse. And we are calling this series of programs Old Commentary Perspectives. We begin immediately. The direction of Ray 3. Surrounded by a multitude of threads, buried in folds and folds of woven goods, the weaver sits. No light can enter where he sits. By the light of a tiny candle carried upon the summit of his head, he dimly sees. He gathers handful after handful of the threads and seeks to weave the carpet of his thoughts and dreams, his desires and aims. His feet move steadily, his hands work swiftly, his voice without cessation chant the words. I weave the pattern which I seek and like. The warp and woof is planned by my desire. I gather here a thread and here another. I gather there another. I gather here a thread and here a color. I gather there another. I blend the colors and I mix and blend the threads. As yet I cannot see the pattern, but it will surely measure up to my desire. Loud voices and a movement from outside the darkened chamber where the weaver sits. They grow in volume and in power. The window breaks, and though the weaver cries aloud, blinded by the sudden light, the sun shines in upon his woven carpet. Its ugliness is thus revealed. A voice proclaims, look from out thy window, weaver, and see the pattern in the skies, the model of the plan, the color and the beauty of the whole. Destroy the carpet which you have for ages wrought. It does not meet your need. Then weave again, weaver. Weave in the light of day. Weave as you see the plan. Okay. Surrounded by a multitude of threads. This is indeed the lower consciousness, however intelligent it may be, and the threads are threads of energy of all the different colors. A weaver has to have at his disposal as many threads as he wishes to pull in to begin to weave his carpet using the warp and the woof of the loom. The whole idea of multitude, of many, even the one and many, is found with the third ray. It is in many ways a ray of multiplication. So there are a great many possible energies from which the weaver, the symbol of the third ray soul, can gather in order to create, because this is also the ray of creative intelligence, not only the ray of active intelligence and abstract intelligence, in order to create the design which he, as an individual, desires. The motivator of all of this activity, and there is a great deal of activity, is desire. Buried in folds and folds of woven goods. He's been at it a long time, many lives. And he is insulated, isolated, cut off from the world and from the correct perception of the world by the many fabrics that he has woven, over the period of time, the many goods that he has woven, the many carpets, tapestries, garments, all of these he has created. The weaver is sitting, in this case. He is not responding to the will by taking a stand, particularly. Sometimes there is the symbolism of sitting and standing. And to stand is to align yourself generally with the will, and often in these cases, with the divine will. So his movement is really encumbered. His relationship to the world is non-existence, because he is, in a way, blocked by all he has created. And when he would attempt to look out into the world, which seems pretty impossible at the moment, he would not see it. He would have to see through all of the creations which he has made. And no doubt the world would be very distorted by this large collection of thought forms which have been woven into something fairly durable, not easily dispensed with. So he has boxed himself in. He has created a situation in which he cannot reach and he cannot be reached. By the light of a tiny candle, there's light here, carried upon the summit of his head, he dimly sees. Well, his sight is limited. We notice that in the case of the second ray, the mole is burrowing into the earth and arriving at the knowledge of the world of natural things, but he is still in the hall of ignorance. He is blinded. The mole is, in fact, an apt symbol, because the mole really is blind. Here, the sight of the weaver is very limited. It's certainly not soul sight. This tiny candle carried upon the summit of his head has something to do with the degree of head center stimulation, but I suppose here it's a symbol for the limited concrete mind, which in this case is the servant of desire. He sees only dimly, as it were, in the words of St. Paul, through a glass darkly. He does not see the truth. He does not see with clarity what he is doing. DK once described the condition of the stimulation of the head center, telling us that the mystic had a stimulation which encompassed the top of the head, but that stimulation had not moved down into the center of the etheric brain and into the region of the pineal gland, where it would move when the soul was really taking control of the lower mechanism. So here we have still quite an individual man who is working with a very small light upon what he is doing, and his sight is dim, and hence we cannot expect that the product that he will create in this semi-light will be very beautiful. He gathers handful after handful of the threads. He's using the power to grasp, and the threads, he chooses exactly what he will bring into his creations, what type of energy, what type of color, what type of sound, what type of individuals who are representative of certain qualities of energy. He has the power of selectivity. This is commonly found in relation to the third ray. It is said that when the first ray wishes to condition a substance, he simply impresses it. When the second ray wishes to condition substance, he chooses a certain proportion and imbues it with his magnetism. The third ray is far more selective and chooses here and there that which he wants. So we get the idea of ambitious, desire-driven process with much grasping. The repetitious grabbing, well, here it says gathering, of many threads that he wishes to bring to bear upon his creative product. Oh, we need this place, we need that person, we need this condition. And we try to bring these things together when we're on the third ray, but in this case we're only driven by desire and our own limited vision. And he seeks to weave the carpet of his thoughts and dreams, his desires and aims. He has thoughts, he has imaginings, he has desires, he has objectives. He wants to combine these all into a creative product, which is here called the carpet. The weaver can weave many things, of course, but a carpet or carpets are one of the foremost products of the loom, and some of them are very beautiful and durable. We have that interesting story of the Master M, who after one of his weavers had woven a tapestry for 10 years, Master M found that one thread was out of place. And he sent it back with the instructions that it be taken apart and rewoven. I guess that would be a lesson that that particular weaver would never forget all throughout his lives. I think Master M had a certain way of being extremely impressive with the lessons that he wanted to impose upon the consciousness of those who were under his supervision. So many things come together under the seventh ray. It's form, activity, substance, and desire. Here it's thoughts, dreams, desires, and aims, but all within the lower personality, all to be combined in some way, even blended, we might say, because the third ray logos has a certain blending power. Now we come to the activity aspect. We're talking about the loom, and he's steadily working the tread so that the loom can function. His feet are working steadily, bringing the threads together and compressing them. His hands are working rapidly. All of this suggests the typical approach of the third ray, which rapid feet, rapid hands, these are the extensions of the man which have to do with the third aspect of divinity. He goes here and there rapidly. He's in constant motion. That is a quality of the third ray. And his hands are deft in their work, and he's interested always in rapidity. Although later, perhaps he is very tactical and cautious. But when the third ray descends into the physical plane, then we have greater rapidity than with the other rays. So there is constant movement as he, in a way, runs about, attempting to create the particular design that he has in mind, and his hands work incessantly, rapidly, selecting the threads and blending them together. This is the symbol of being able to select. You don't select with your feet, perhaps if you're some sort of early primate, you select with your feet, but the human being selects with his hands, and what is selected, what is gathered, is combined into that which is in process of creation. Remember always, this is the ray of creative activity. Okay. And his voice, well, the third ray rules the voice. We are told that the throat center is ruled primarily by the Earth at first, which is a third-ray personality planet, and by Saturn later, which is a planet which probably has a third-ray soul, certainly a third-ray monad, and even later the seventh ray comes in to the throat center, but probably bringing in Uranus, which also has a third ray combination. So the throat center is given to the manifestation of the thought, or the rendering of the idea into a clothed form. And we hear of third ray people that they speak a great deal, and that they apparently don't give the interlude. This is what we find with third ray, and even with sixth ray, a kind of hyperactivity. These are the two rays, we might say, of activism. So we have the idea of incessant words and expression through the throat center in this process of preparing the creative product which is intended. There should be a decent interval, but now this individual is entirely under the effect of what we might call rajas. He has transcended the tamasic or the inertia phase, and now he is in constant motion under the impulse of desire. And he is using a kind of a personal mantra here. He's chanting the words, "I weave the pattern which I seek and like." Notice the I is there, just as it is for all of those in the first phases of the law of repulse, no matter what the ray may be. We are moving from the personal through loss into a higher soul perspective. So he is driven by his desire and by his preferences, and according to his desire and preferences, so he chooses the threads, so he combines them, so he renders the pattern however dimly he sees. The warp and woof is planned by my desire, and on the warp and woof, the design of the weaver is generally laid out. What is important to realize is it's not planned by his soul-infused mind. It's planned by what he, as a person, as an individual, prefers, what attracts him, what he likes. He's still in the realm of like and dislike. His activity is constant as he seeks to materialize or manifest his project. I gather, this constant accumulation, interesting accumulation, is involved with both the second ray and the third ray. Perhaps in the case of the second ray, it is more, well, there's a kind of an overlap. It's more inclusion, and the causal body breaks through inclusiveness. But at the same time, we saw that the third type of second ray soul, there's an overlap there, was busy gathering the nuggets of the knowledge of the world. So there is that gathering and inclusion, and the third ray causal body breaks through over attraction or over accumulation of that which it selects and finds important. So accumulation is there. It dies by accumulation, and the second ray causal body in general dies by inclusion. I weave the pattern, however blindly, which I seek and like. The warp and woof, the general layout of the tapestry or the carpet in this case, is planned by my desire. I gather the materials I want. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to be a part of it. I want that place. I want that condition. I want this and that. I want to bring selectively this and that which I desire into my creation. I gather here a thread and here a color. An energy thread is kind of a movement of energy, and a color is a quality. So he's not just gathering inert substances, he's gathering dynamic processes as well, and it needs a little more of this, a little more of that. These are the qualities or the colors which he gathers. And he gathers there another. So he is gathering here and gathering there in a wide field from which he may select, however blindly and desire-driven his selection may be. He's blending the colors. I blend the colors and I mix and blend the threads according to his preferences. And oftentimes with the third ray, it's not particularly tasteful. Somewhere the Tibetan says that the third ray, he, as a host, let us say, he threw together those who suited each other not. Something to that effect, you know. The seventh ray hostess is very, very careful to seat people appropriately at the table according to the way they might interact. But the third ray oftentimes is not that sensitive and throws together elements, colors, people who suit each other not and who may even clash, we may say. So I blend the colors and I mix and blend the threads. I combine. You see, this is the quality, this is the ability to achieve combination. Astrologers on the third ray must develop the power of combination and to be able to interpret combination. What are the constituent threads of any combination, and what is the general effect of the combination of those two threads, which is different from either of the threads. So he is making a kind of a molecular combination here. He's putting things together which have a quality perhaps even different from the threads which he has gathered accordingly. It's an ongoing creative process, and he's not quite sure what will come of it, but he has a lot of confidence because of his activity, I suppose, that everything will measure up to his desire. As yet I cannot see the pattern. Well, he's working very much in the dark, isn't he? Because he's in the isolated personal consciousness. He's lit only by the concrete mind and his desire nature. He doesn't really see the larger pattern or that in which his creativity is occurring. Okay, something fall down here, so we're going to try to find what that is. Okay. And what was it that just fell down? Very interesting. It was a little wooden statue of a seventh ray magician with a long white beard. Looks like the seventh ray type just couldn't stand all this narrative about the occasionally chaotic third ray type, though later love of the ordered process, even for the third ray, does control. So anyway, the design is not particularly enlightened. The gathering happens here and there, and the blending and the mixing with unforeseen results proceeds in the half-light. But there's a great confidence. You know how it is when you get on a roll and there's a lot of activity and you actually think you're doing something. One of my mentors said it was always important to discriminate action from motion. Sounds like here there's a lot of motion operative here, and that motion is giving the illusion of real accomplishment, the sense that all this activity will surely have some good end and will measure up to the desire, however shifting that desire may be, however unaligned that desire may be with the greater plan. Okay, so that's the personal phase of the law of repulse discussed, and now something's going to happen. Obviously, there always comes some kind of intervention. The soul promotes that intervention in some way, even though the effective means of the intervention may be occurring from the elements and forces of the three lower worlds. Loud voices and a movement from outside the darkened chamber where the weaver sits. Well, loud voices. This is interesting. It's a bit of karma, isn't it? Because the third ray type, being very, very verbal and somewhat perhaps insensitive to the environment, at least aesthetically, oftentimes speaks quite loudly, and covers over experience and the possibility of another speaking with a loud voice. So here is the return on that. Loud voices and movement both belong to the third ray. There is a mobilization of forces. It's as if a crowd or a mob is attacking the seclusion in which this type finds himself. It's in a darkened chamber, the darkened chamber of consciousness. He perceives it, at least, as a great interference. This is where the weaver is sitting. He is now interrupted. No doubt this interruption has come from an impulse from the soul by whatever karmic means it is brought about. So there is a din occurring and a great motion. It's as if a mob, let us say, is attacking the place where someone lives and is interrupting his process. The mob can be at first, well, if we call it a crowd, it can be well disciplined, but this crowd is turning into a mob and it's getting unruly. It's as if all of the forces from within the man, instigated, shall we say, by some sort of spiritual impulse, can no longer tolerate the darkened illusion in which this consciousness is living. Everything in him is trying to break him out of his preoccupation with blind creativity. So these loud voices, which are the forces of the lower nature as instigated by the higher nature, and even the forces of the environment, which are basically giving feedback on what the man is creating, they are growing in strength. The decibel level is up, the power to create change is up, and at last the intrusion comes. A window breaks, and though the weaver cries aloud, blinded by the sudden light, the sun shines in upon his woven carpet. So it's very interesting that we oftentimes see through a window, which is the symbol of the mind. DK had one disciple who was the third ray soul and the sixth ray personality, and he said, your window out to the world is badly fogged and it's dirty, and you need to clean that window so you can really see. But still, it's not the same as putting one's head out the window and actually breathing the fresh air and participating in reality as it is. So this sort of crystalline separation, which DK also talked about, some sort of wall of crystal through which you could see, but which prevented real and full interactivity and experience. The window breaks. A stone is thrown, I imagine. The forces break in upon this apparently hyper-productive process, but also a futile process in which the weaver is engaging. A window breaks, and the weaver is shocked. He cries aloud because it's no longer semi-darkness in which he's working. The sun is shining in. The sudden light is blinding him to all that had preoccupied him before. His desires, his aims, his wishes, all of these things are blotted out suddenly in the light. And the sun, in this case, again, the light of summer enters in, we remember, for the second ray law of repulse, and here the sun is shining in upon the woven carpet. In other words, soul perspective. The sun is the illumination provided by the soul. The light of the soul shines in. It influences the mind. He perceives now, in the light of the soul, the actual design he has woven. His woven carpet, it turns out, is in this new light ugly. Ugly indeed. Its ugliness is thus revealed, and he has enough within him to know what is ugly and what is beautiful. He couldn't see very clearly before. He was under the impulse of desire, and he was assured himself that it would be beautiful. But in the light of the larger perspective, the ugliness of his creative, incessant creative and semi-blind efforts is revealed. It's a great shock, and of course he is repelled by what he sees. Later we're going to see with the fourth ray that he's quite happy about all the beautiful music and paintings and so forth that he is creating, and then suddenly crashing came a note, a great chord, which will drive the mixer of the sweet sounds to quiet. In other words, the chord of God is now resonating. The higher beauty, the higher creativity is now obtruding into his consciousness, and he cannot help but compare. And I suppose that's what happens with all of these stanzas in the Law of Repulse. The individual cannot help but compare what he has done with what is revealed. Revelation causes a sense of the inadequacy of all that upon which the individual, strictly as a person, has labored. And then comes the, sort of depression. What have I done? It's been futile. Look at all the time I've wasted. Nothing has come of this, and so forth. And all of those kind of self-defeating thoughts that occur before a form of re-aspiration stimulated by the soul rises up. So the soul is entering the mind now. The soul is entering the darkened chamber of consciousness and is revealing really the quality of what he's been doing. See, the second aspect is quality, and doing is the third ray. And there's so much doing that one does not pause or stop to evaluate the quality of what one has been doing. One just has the vague kind of confidence that doing is a good in its own right, and much doing will lead to something. But that's just motion. That's not really action. All right, its ugliness is thus revealed. Appalling sight, because everything is a mess, All of the different threads have been put in some non-archetypal juxtaposition and do not complement each other. And, you've seen messy paintings, and you've seen garments that are falling apart, let us say. You've seen things in tatters. Ugliness has so much to do with composition and how the different qualities and threads are arranged with respect to each other. That's where the seventh ray is a ray of beauty, and so is the fourth ray. They understand a right arrangement from an aesthetic perspective. And here it's an appalling sight. But now a voice proclaims, and this has to be the voice of the soul, the voice of that which sees and understands from a much wider perspective, the voice of the higher self, even in a way the voice of the master, although the soul is the first master. Look from out thy window, weaver. Of course, the window is now broken, isn't it? Maybe he has more than one window in the place. But in other words, use your mind and see clearly the environment around you, weaver. In other words, here's the weaver who is combining this and that, his great desires to throw things together and make them happen, make them manifest, and then behold the wonder of what he has manifested. But here he is appalled, and now he's being given a corrective from a higher perspective. Look from out thy window, weaver, use your mind, and see the pattern in the skies. Well, the pattern in the skies obviously has a lot to do with the travel of the planets and the position of the constellations, and he is being enjoined to use astrology in order to understand what the divine plan really is in all of its cyclic sequence. The plan moves forward according to the revolutions of the planets through the different constellations and signs of the zodiac. All of these cycles, all knowledge being very related to the third ray on the third subplane of the third or atmic plane, all of these cycles have very much to do with how the plan is conceived in relation to the purpose, which is more steady and unchangeable configuration. Look from out thy window, weaver. In other words, look up. Just don't look down at your own mad, endless, incessant creativity, and behold how the cycles are operating, because you're going to need to create in companionship with these cycles, in relation to these cycles. So learn astrology. See the model of the plan. Model of the plan is in the sky. And those who are conceiving the plan, how it will express the purpose, know very well what the cycles are, how much time they have, what is the quality of the various cycles, what can be accomplished under certain forces and energies which are operative during these cycles. So the model of the plan is written in the heavens, and astrology is part and parcel of the model of the planners. The color and the beauty of the whole. See, if you have not created something very beautiful, you've created something quite random and messy based upon the importunity, the impetuousness of your own desire. Now there is something here that is truly beautiful. It's in motion. It is far beyond the personal, far beyond the individual even, and it is a great, divine beauty which is involved in the larger picture and the relations which are existing in ordered, lawful, cyclic relationship in the larger context. So in a way, study the macrocosm is what is being said here. Just don't get so involved in your own little desires for this or that, usually for selfish purpose. But study the order, the cycles, the color, the quality, the interactive beauty of the whole picture. And the plan deals with the whole and not with any one part. So decentralize yourself and look at the larger possibilities which the plan gives to all human beings and to the planet as a whole. Now, repulse. You just don't need to be involved anymore with what you have created. It really, to try to correct what you have created will not work. So destroy the carpet which you have for ages wrought. This is not the product of one lifetime. For ages, the weaver has been at work following his third-ray tendencies, regardless of what the personality ray has been. We know that only later in the development of man is it possible to have a third-rate personality. A certain degree of intelligence has to be reached, and the same can be said for a third-ray soul. So we are not born in the early days with a fourth, fifth, sixth, rather with a third-ray soul, but only with a fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh-ray personality or soul. Yet it can be many, many thousands of years, even millions of years, in which the individual can function with the third-ray personality and can have transferred off of one of the soul rays of attribute into a soul ray of aspect. So it's right to say for ages he has been throwing things together and trying to make happen that which he desires. So destroy all of your preconceptions, the patterns of behavior you have woven, your ways of viewing the world. Destroy your old tendencies and what you have manifested upon the earth. It needs re-manifestation. The patterns of your activity do not correlate, are not congruent with the patterns of beauty, which are in the model of the plan and given by the pattern in the skies. In other words, your action does not correlate with the divine plan, so You need a repatterning. You need to change the patterns of your interactions and your behaviors with the world, destroy all of those links and lines with the environment which are based upon some false pattern. We have to reweave now. It does not meet your need. It does not meet your present soul need. It's not your personal need anymore, because from the soul and even from the spiritual triad, because this law of repulse does carry the first-rate power of the monad as it comes through the spiritual triad, the old creation does not meet your present need, born of increasing soul illumination, and increasing understanding and perspective of the higher worlds. Then start over again. This is so often the case. The garden in the first law of repulse had to be replanted. Another garden replaced the earlier one. There was a new type of approach to knowledge and wisdom. In the second law of repulse, it was no longer centered in the lower three worlds. And here we are weaving again, but consciously, in the light of the soul, which has made its presence felt. This is a different kind of weaving, and it's not governed by individual desire. It's not even governed by individual illusions. It's governed by the soul-illumined mind, by the triadally stimulated soul-infused consciousness. It's a different type of manifestation altogether. So the weaving is taking place not in this dim light of a tiny candle carried on the summit of the head, but it's in the light of day, which initially is the light of the soul, and even later is the light of the abstract mind, and of buddhi, or pure reason, the light of the spiritual triad, the light of the divine will. The higher types of energies of the spiritual triad are now providing a blazing light in which the individual is absolutely conscious of what he is doing, why he is selecting, why he is blending this or that. He will only choose appropriately. He will only weave now according to the model which he has seen, the model of the plan. We know for the third ray we have what is called the urge to formulate a plan. And so this can operate in a very primitive way in the beginning. Any old plan according to your desire will do, but now this is God's plan. This is the plan of the spiritual hierarchy, the plan of Shambhala, the plan of the planetary logos, as much as the man can fathom it. So he's always checking his actions against that which the greater plan requires, the actions which the greater plan requires. So he is really using Saturn now, and he's seeking to conform to the larger cycles. His consciousness is now illumined, and he is able to weave not according to his own limited vision, but according to his vision of the plan. So obviously the Antakarana is built, because without the Antakarana built, you cannot really see the plan in any kind of accurate delineation. So now we have the illumined weaver. And yeah, in one of the earlier stanzas having to do with the techniques of integration, the weaver is actually standing at a certain point. Whether the weaver is here sitting or standing, he is at least responsive to that which is directing the planet towards a good end, and all of his creative power is no longer wasted, no longer producing ugliness, no longer the source of false confidence. He's much more careful. He understands the need for interlude. It's no longer steadily, swiftly, incessantly, ongoingly, with a high on his own activity. He's understanding now the need for the interval. And in another one of these old commentary stanzas, it says, and silently he weaves. Interesting, the silence coming in, because his voice is no longer incessantly chattering, filling the atmosphere with his verbal creations, which are so much mental verbal clutter, which later are in his way when he attempts to receive impression from the higher worlds. So let's, I think, in order to get the whole idea here, I think what we should do is read it again with these ideas in mind. Many of us are conditioned by the third ray. The entire planet with its third ray personality means that the third ray conditioning is prevalent. In a sixth ray age, the third ray is closely related. DK tells us how the third and sixth rays are related, even mathematically. We are making a transition out of the third ray just as we are out of the sixth ray. The transition out of the third ray is even of greater moment because the second ray soul of the planet will be gradually taking over. But this does not mean that the third ray will not be used to good effect. I suppose that on our planet there are many at this time who are third ray monads, having come from the moon chain where the greater proportion of monads from that earlier group are on the third ray, 75% he says, and 12.5% first and second ray each, and those who come from the previous solar system have a very strong third ray coloring. So this is a very, very potent ray, and its particular types of limitations coming from the previous solar system, the so-called primordial ray, have to be overcome by the divine ray of love wisdom in this particular solar system. And thus what is needed then is stillness. Stillness being that particular quality which the second ray has amply and which the third ray has to develop. Surrounded by a multitude of threads, buried in folds and folds of woven goods, the weaver sits. No light can enter where he sits. By the light of a tiny candle, carried upon the summit of his head, he dimly sees. He gathers handful after handful of the threads, and seeks to weave the carpet of his thoughts and dreams, his desires and his aims. His feet move steadily, his hands work swiftly, his voice without cessation chant the words. I weave the carpet, I weave the pattern which I seek and like. The warp and woof is planned by my desire. I gather here a thread and here a color, I gather there another, I blend the colors and I mix and blend the threads. As yet I cannot see the pattern, but it will surely measure up to my desire. Loud voices and a movement from outside the darkened chamber where the weaver sits. They grow in volume and in power. A window breaks, and though the weaver cries aloud, blinded by the sudden light, the sun shines in upon his woven carpet. Its ugliness is thus revealed. A voice proclaims, "Look from out thy window, weaver, and see the pattern in the skies, the model of the plan, the color and the beauty of the whole. Destroy the carpet which you have for ages wrought. It does not meet your need. Then weave again, weaver, weave in the light of day, weave as you see the plan." I think there's so much we have to learn about what is correct activity. It is possible to follow the inclinations of the personality, which basically, no matter what its ray, is a representative of the third or activity aspect of divinity. So there is an inherent maya, which is the tendency of many personalities. It is a chaos without form. It's kind of work which has no true objective, to use the words which are taken from the seventh ray law of repulse, and which the seventh ray type very much wants to bring to an end. And yet, we This is the ray of civilization, and the great lord of civilization, the Mahachohan, now the Master R, with his seventh ray soul and his third ray monad, impossible to think otherwise really, is one of the great and intelligent representatives of the third ray. So DK tells us that he prefers the name, the ray of creative intelligence for this ray, and we can understand how the manifestation of the divine plan in perfect timing, under the control of the laws of cycles, is in the hands of this third ray type in a large and general sense. The broad correlations of all the energies and forces and factors involved in manifesting the divine plan is under the control of the third ray types. So we have to move here from chaos to beauty, really, from the tendency toward chaos, which comes from unregulated hyperactivity, towards a very judicious, cautious, well-timed, under Saturn, well-timed application of the third ray energy. And then we will become the true weaver who is weaving in the light of the divine plan, silently behind the scenes, and bringing together the kinds of forces according to the available cycles, which must be used at any particular time in order to precipitate that aspect of the divine plan which is due for precipitation. While it's true, the seventh ray type will have more tendency to precipitate the detail of the divine plan, at least the correlation and coordination of forces is handled by the third ray type, and love of the ordered process does at last control. Sometimes we think the third ray type may be doomed to chaos forever, but it is not so. When there is truly an intelligent understanding of what's trying to happen as impulse from the highest levels, then there can be a well-regulated type of action which loses all chaos and rush and a sense of throwing things together without judicious deliberation. See, I'm using all of these Saturnian words. So eventually we have a very, very wise understanding of the divine plan. The soul realizes the one and in many, and the word goes forth in perfect understanding for the third ray type. He realizes he is the worker and the work, the one that is. He realizes he is the one in many and the many in the one. So don't be among those people who, when third ray is indicated or sixth ray is indicated, try to evade the implications. Believe it or not, I think I've said it before, that DK has told us that the majority of personalities at this particular time in history are found either on the third ray or the sixth ray. I'm sometimes surprised when looking at the PIP test, Personal Identity Profile 2, that the third ray is artificially subdued, it seems. And thus it is often for the sixth ray, with the first ray artificially elevated. These relate to our preferences and not to the facts. All of us have to learn how to be the weaver. As a matter of fact, all of us have to learn how to be the director and the, to a certain extent, the scholar and the weaver and the mixer and the worker and the follower and the magician. All of us have those strands of energy within us, although in different proportions. So all of us have much to learn by studying each of these particular stanzas. Okay, I think it will be the time then. We'll end this with the Great Invocation, and we'll go on to Ray 4. Ray 4. Okay. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth. Into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth. Into the hearts of men, may Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, we leave the weaver now constructively working in line with the plan as he moves towards the higher initiations, towards the third initiation, and we will take up the fourth law of repulse next. Okay, friends, here we are continuing with the direction of Ray 4, the law of repulse, the Old Commentary Perspectives. We have completed now the rays of aspect. When I say completed, in other words, some ideas have been given. Obviously, we could go much deeper into it, and it's necessary for every individual who is found on one of these rays to make the specific application to himself or herself. We have the gardener of Ray 1 deciding what shall be planted, what shall be weeded out, what is a worthy garden, what should it include. We have the scholar on Ray 2 deciding at length what is worthy of deep study and understanding and what is secondary. We have the weaver on Ray 3 making the decision of what shall be woven in what kind of light and according to what kind of design or template shall all be governed by desire and the illusions of the concrete mind as it serves desire, or shall the soul-illumined mind and the triadly infused soul-infused personality be the true weaver? Now we come to the mixer. How interesting, these different words. The idea of mixing and blending applies to both the third ray and to the fourth ray. Perhaps the idea of threads does not so much apply to the fourth ray, but there is the blending power of the third logos when compared to the harmonizing power of the fourth logos. And that which is mixed and blended by the fourth ray is liable to be aesthetically more pleasing and harmonious than that which is blended, brought together, mixed and blended by the third ray. The threads seem to keep somewhat of their distinction with the third ray, more so than the colors of the fourth ray. Let's read this and see how it impresses us. Now, remember, there are not so many fourth ray souls in incarnation at this time, though that number will greatly increase, and probably in those countries which have a fourth ray soul or even a fourth ray personality, souls on the fourth ray are likely to appear. Germany, Austria, we have Italy with its fourth ray personality. There are others. The soul ray of a country indicates souls within that country, the prevalence of, and the personality ray of a country also indicates souls within that country, though the souls who represent the personality ray may be functioning at a lower level of expression. There can be no doubt when considering the United States, for instance, that there are many, with its sixth ray personality, that there are many sixth ray souls in the United States. So the personality ray of the country is indicating the presence of those who are on that ray for their soul. As far as the mixture of personalities in a country goes, I'm sure that there's great variety, though perhaps we could find certain types of personalities more preponderant. In any case, this is related to the fourth ray soul. Perhaps those on the fourth ray personality can also use to some lesser extent this particular law of repulse. This is emphasizing, I think, the artistic side of the fourth ray. Other stanzas emphasize the combative nature of the fourth ray. The integration formula is full of conflict, and so is the formula for the Great One on the fourth ray. He rushed forth to combat in the very first sentence, but here it's quite different. I take and mix and blend. I bring together that which I desire. I harmonize the whole. Thus spoke the mixer as he stood within his darkened chamber. I realize the unseen beauty of the world. Color I know, and sound I know. I hear the music of the spheres, and note on note, and chord on chord, they speak their thought to me. The voices which I hear intrigue and draw me, and with the sources of these sounds I seek to work. I seek to paint and blend the pigments needed. I must create the music which will draw to me those who like the pictures which I make, the colors which I blend, the music which I can evoke. Me they will therefore like, and me they will adore. But crashing came a note of music, a chord of sound, which drove the mixer of sweet sounds to quiet. His sounds died out within the sound, and only the great chord of God was heard. A flood of light poured in, his colors faded out. Around him naught but darkness could be seen, yet in the distance loomed the light of God. He stood between his nether darkness and the blinding light. His world in ruins lay around. His friends were gone. Instead of harmony, there was dissonance. Instead of beauty, there was found the darkness of the grave. The voice then chanted forth these words: "Create again, my child, and build and paint and blend the tones of beauty, but this time for the world and not thyself." The mixer started then his work anew, and worked again. Inspiration comes ever anew. This is a very, very full symbolic treatment here. The fourth ray is in many ways a ray of symbolism, and it requires an intuitive approach, and it deals with hidden factors which only the intuition can touch. Let the outer glory pass away, and the beauty of the inner light reveal the one. Then it goes on that dissonance give place to harmony, and from the center of the hidden light, let the soul speak, let the word roll forth. Beauty and glory veil me not, I stand revealed, I am. Something subtle behind appearances is intuited by the fourth ray type, and we're going to see this subtlety. It's almost a Neptunian quality, Neptune being associated with the fourth or Buddhic plane, which is truly the plane of harmony, and perhaps of harmony, beauty, and art, perhaps the greatest artistic ideas which we have been bringing through are coming from impression, from the Buddhic plane. But here, again, the individual is very much the personality, even if an advanced personality. I mean, before this law of repulse can be applied, the individual must be advanced enough to be able to experience it and to learn from it and to emerge into something greater after it is applied. I take, it's a bit like gathering the threads, but I suppose these are the colors and notes and sounds and forms. I take and mix and blend. The idea of mixing many things together, perhaps mixing one's colors to get just the right quality that one wants. I remember, when I was in art class as a very young person, I don't think my form was particularly good, but I used to love to mix colors and change the quality of the color by adding this or that additional color. It was something that I really enjoyed. I think I came in on the fourth ray, certainly. I think I had a lot of fourth ray experience in previous personalities, and however much the sort of devoted one-pointed sixth ray may be taking over at this time. But I knew what this was all about, to take and mix and then blend according to one's aesthetic sense. But it is one's aesthetic sense. We are very much the personality here, even if the advanced personality. So we are making an aesthetic combination. And I think the fourth ray type is much better at doing this than the third ray type is. It's not talking here about necessarily working in the half light, though he does stand within a darkened chamber, which is the symbol for personal consciousness, which is not yet illumined by the light of the soul. Again, I bring together that which I desire. All of this is coming out of the sensitivity of the astral body with its feeling for harmony and disharmony and its love of color. We have DK telling us that whenever there's a strong color demonstration, the astral body is involved. And I harmonize, that's one of the motives from the very beginning, I harmonize the whole. Well, the whole of what? The the whole of that which is considered as the creative process, not the whole cosmos, not the whole planet, not the whole of humanity, as such harmonizations would be the motive of someone who's very far beyond this particular level. But the wholeness of what is under one's attention is to be harmonized, and there's a great attention given to that type of harmonization which exists within its own field and is not necessarily harmonization with a higher archetype or harmonization with higher laws or values. So this is harmonization somehow largely within the field of personality, though there are intimations, mystical contact, we might say, with that which is more subtle. Somewhere here, there is a discussion of glamour from Glamour World Problem. And if we go to approximately, let's say, 124, let's try that. Probably that's a little too far. But we will see for fourth ray glamours, the glamour of musical perception, the glamour of harmony aiming at personal comfort and satisfaction, then the opposite, the glamour of war, the glamour of vague artistic perception. I think we're going to find something of this in this Law of Repulse, this direction of the fourth ray. The glamour of psychic perception, with all of its sensitivities, instead of real intuition coming from the Buddhic plane, the glamour of musical perception, one wonders how it can be a glamour, but perhaps it is a type of music which is not yet reflective of the greater music which is being composed by the master composer on our planet, who is himself Sanat Kumara. And the glamour of the pairs of opposites, I suppose their battle in the higher sense. And there is somewhere, well, the vague artistic perception kind of suggests a type of mysticism in relation to the field of art. So I harmonize the whole, and I control the elements which I am bringing together, and I don't leave them in splendid isolation. I bring them into relationship. I don't, like the fifth ray, the law of cleavage is not strong in the fourth ray. It's more interested in how the different qualities and colors relate to each other and tries to arrange them according to color harmony, sound harmony, and the will to harmonize, even though on a relatively lower personality level, is very strong in this type. Thus spoke the mixer, he who brings all things into relation and ideally harmonious relation as he stood. He's not sitting for some reason. Somehow we have to look carefully at this idea of sitting and standing, because I think it tells us something in kind of a subtext of what is going on behind the scenes. As he stood within his darkened chamber, he's in the darkened chamber of personality. It may seem that our personality consciousness is quite illumined, quite revelatory of many qualities and thoughts and even ideas, that we are quite perceptive of many, many things, but by comparison with a wider world of light, of love and power, which substands this chamber of personality consciousness, it is indeed a darkened chamber. And eventually the light divine will shine into it, and all forms will be understood as precipitations of light. Now, you know, the vague artistic perception, the moving towards Buddhi, the moving into the intangible, coming under the influence of Neptune, which I think has a certain amount of the fourth ray associated with it, certainly as a major ruler of the Buddhic plane. I realize the unseen beauty of the world. So many are not sensitive to this, and this is people on this ray are often acutely sensitive. There's something about the interplay of the opposites which has worn away their callus, the callus of consciousness, so that they indeed in some ways are almost raw in their in the way that they experience impact. There's a statement by the poet Rilke, the German poet, fourth ray soul of Germany. Beauty can pierce one like a pain. Beauty can pierce one like a pain. That's this incredible sensitivity of the fourth ray. So other people just look out and see the testimony of the senses, but there is a sense of the proportion and the beautiful and the kind of interaction of all things to create beauty, which underlies the fourth ray perception of the world. But it is unseen by many, and yet divined or subtly sensed by those upon the fourth ray. So he's oriented towards this hidden beauty and not just to take things at face value. There is something in his mode of perception which reveals through his senses an archetypal something which lies behind the revelation of the senses. Not fully, of course, not yet. It's just an intimation and a reaching into the subtle worlds which the fourth ray type is capable of. A very subtle ray in many respects. Color I know and sound I know. Well, these are the two great factors with which the fourth ray type works. Of course, you can also work with words or with movement and dance and so forth, but color and sound offer the particular method by which the fourth ray type, the soul, destroys the causal body. So there is a knowledge of music and a knowledge of color, harmony. In some people there is both, and in some people the sound is color and color is sound, as it is for the devas. But let's just say there's a greater sensitivity to color and all of its shades and nuances, and to sound and the kinds of harmonies or disharmonies that are produced than are greater sensitivity than is usually found in the average individual on other rays. And here I hear the music of the spheres. Now that would be a very, very deep perception. The music of the spheres is it's kind of a, who's to say exactly what it is. As the planets circulate, as they revolve, they are all involved in sounding and sounding together in a group process, and are participating in the creation of the so-called solar sonata, which is being created by our solar logos. So there is, let's just call it a kind of heavenly music. There are many kinds of spheres. There are the spheres of the planets rotating and revolving, and there are also the spheres of the different planes of spheres, each with their keynotes and their vibrations which accord or discord with each other. And he's saying basically here that he hears a kind of subtle music. Melodies come to him, harmonies come to him, and he attributes that to some deeper structure. So already you can see that the fourth ray type is touching something divine. But the problem is, at least in the beginning of this law of repulse, that no matter what may be the spirituality or divinity of that which is touched, the personality appropriates it and says, okay, this belongs to me, and everything becomes self-referencing. We know that self-centeredness is one of the problems of the fourth ray type. Certainly so with the fourth ray personality. Is it so with the fourth ray soul? Well, in general, anything you can say of a personality, you can say of a soul, but much higher potentials are realized using that soul note. So anyway, the music of the spheres is speaking the heavenly music, the subtle music, a source that others cannot quite divine. It has a musical signature to it, and note on note and chord on chord, they speak their thought to me. This is a very subtle type of perception, even for a personality. The notes do come through, the combinations of notes which we call chords, in their sequences come through. The beauty of chord sequences comes through. The beauty of harmonic progression is coming through. And where exactly is this coming from? What is the origin of music? Let's just say that it's sufficient to know that it is subtle. And it can come in some ways from the astral body, but it can come also from still higher planes. And one is receiving messages, shall we say, through sound and color, and combinations of colors that we might call color chords, combinations of notes that we always call chords. Something is being communicated to this type from the subtle world, and it's very exhilarating, very inspiring, and there is a communion going on with the subtle world. And with all that going, you would think that it would be possible to act in a way that was not quite personal and adolescent. But I think some of the folks on this particular ray give us the most unpredictable, uncontrolled, and even adolescent behavior. He's hearing voices, the voices which are as heavenly voices. Remember, the fourth ray is connected with the angelic kingdom. So I think there is a lot of Davic inspiration with the colors sensed and the notes heard by this type. So are angel voices heard? Well, perhaps they are. Maybe some of us have heard some otherworldly music. We didn't know where it came from, almost like listening in on an inner concert. I've had that experience. It's quite shocking and intriguing. And the voices which I hear, these heavenly voices, these higher voices, probably musical voices, although for the poet, who can say? Maybe it's simply the voices conveying words. The voices which I hear intrigue and draw me. They're not fully understood, but they are fascinating, and the individual's focusing on these subtle types of sound, and they attract him, almost you might say, away from the normal world, because so often the fourth ray types are considered to be impractical, so concerned with relationship and beauty and harmony that they fail to pay attention to the interplay and demands of the lower world. This is not so much the case with the third ray, which is connected by ray specifically with the outer form and with the material element, although there is a kind of a fourth ray connection with matter as well, we might say. So there is sort of the glamour of the aspects of the physical body here with fourth ray types. But anyway, we're on a different track now, and subtle things which others cannot hear are fascinating and attractive, and they draw the attentive fourth ray type towards them. And rather than look at the world of mundane things, he's very much in the world of beauty, sound, color, and he wants to work with the sources of these sounds. Are they Davic sources? Are they planar sources? Are they planetary sources? All he knows is there's an inner world of voice, color, and sound, and that's where he's turning his attention. You know, you kind of think about the process that a great composer must go through, you know, and how very inwardly turned they are during the composition process, how they cannot be disturbed. If they are disturbed, you know, the whole world they're trying to create comes crashing in. I'm reminded of stories of Puccini, the great opera composer. He was so utterly sensitive, you know, that he had to work at midnight and in the wee hours of the morning when no sounds would disturb him. Others, on the other hand, like Schubert or Mozart, I guess they could write beautiful music on a napkin in the middle of a bar. But that means that their inner concentration was so great that none of the outer sounds distracted them. So there's an inward attunement with the sources of beauty, which probably is a mystical orientation and cannot be really described with any accuracy at this point, certainly not in an occult way. Nevertheless, the connection is there, a kind of a antikarana towards inner sound and inner color is there. Some of this may come out being very astral, as we see in a lot of the astral art that purports to be New Age art. And there's much music that is very astral as well, and it simply deals sensorially with the appreciation of certain sounds. Doesn't have deep meaning to it, doesn't have deep structure to it. But it's a beginning. It's a beginning of the Buddhic impression. So the voices which I hear intrigue and draw me, and with the sources of these sounds I seek to work. So trying to intuitively divine the source, to hear ever more and then to write it down. You know, do one's melodies and harmonies come from within oneself? Beethoven walked through the Vienna woods, got great ideas. He carried his notebook. When an inspiration came to him, he wrote it down. He wrote the melody down. But of course, the working of it, the mathematical, architectural construction of it all, this was up to him, I think. I seek to paint and blend. I seek to paint and blend the pigments needed. So there's all types of expression that are coming out here. Maybe not all fourth ray types can do all these things, but even the way the language is given here in this particular law of repulse shows mixing at work. 1 minute he's painting, he's singing, he's blending, he's composing, he's doing all the different types of artistic expression, even in the same sentence. So I seek to paint and blend the pigments needed because I'm not just taking things as they are from the natural world. I want to create exactly that pigment which reflects the need that I perceive, the aesthetic need that I perceive in any moment. There's an inner compulsion here, the urge to create. I must create the music. Now it's music. It was painting a minute ago. I must create the music which will draw to me. It's part of the law of attraction. It's on the 246 line. The law of attraction is very much involved with the fourth ray, as is the polarity of the sexes and the attraction between them. So this is working with magnetism. I must create the music which will draw to me, and now he changes, those who like the pictures which I make, the colors which I blend. And let's see, next. And the music which I can evoke, meaning that this music is not just from myself, but from some higher source. But I think the operative word here is like. In other words, there's personal magnetism operating here. And even though there is involvement with all of this beauty, the motive behind it is not yet beauty for beauty's sake or beauty for some higher purpose, but beauty for the glorification of the personality, of the lower individual. And there is a reflection of the second ray, love of being loved. We learn about that. The power, let's see, the love of love must dominate and not the love of being loved. This is in the second ray integration formula. We see it reflected here in the fourth ray. A number of fourth ray souls do make the transition onto the second ray, not necessarily all. So there's a very close relation between these two rays, and they are both rays of beauty, and they both occupy a central position. The fourth ray is central between the higher three and the lower three, and the second ray central between the two other rays of aspect. So both are correlated with beauty, and beauty, harmony, blending always has to do with a middle position, which both the fourth ray and the second ray take. So this inner compulsion to create, but what's the motive? It's pretty much to glorify what the man thinks he is, namely a personality. I must create the music which will draw to me those who like the pictures which I make. They will admire my work. The colors which I blend, they will admire my colors. The music which I can evoke, they will admire my music. You know, it's a bit like the like the sixth ray it goes, my truth, my peace, my satisfied desire, my dream, my vision of reality, my limited ideal, my finite thought of God. All these my's show a lower identification, and here he comes out and says, me they will therefore like and dislike. The fourth ray types are very, very sensitive to like and dislike and to the words which convey like or dislike. Very changeable in that regard. And me they will adore. It goes from liking, first from liking to adoration, and they want to bask in that appreciation of them for that which they create, and not necessarily it becomes difficult to separate the creator from the creation, and perhaps the higher forms of artists can very much separate the value of the creation from that which they are as a person, but not the individual at this still personal state of consciousness. So here is the urge to the creative life. It's the fourth method of inducing soul control, and while people on all the rays can function according to that urge to the creative life, it's particularly so for the fourth ray type. And here are all these different arts mixed and blended together in the same sentence. The only thing that seems to be missing is dance and drama, but you could throw that in as well. Well, as we know, with these law of repulse formulas, this condition of isolation in the darkened chamber cannot long remain, because then the individual would remain static and would not grow. So this is not to be, and naturally we're going to have some sort of intervention of the divine, aren't we? Okay. And here we have it, a rude awakening. Always the law of repulse involves an awakening to the larger sphere, the end of self-satisfaction with one's own activities and creations and processes and pursuits, the end of satisfaction with those limited things, and the demand to become cognizant of and preoccupied with much larger processes. So here it comes, crashing. It's almost like a first ray word, and we realize there is a strong relation between the first and the fourth ray. The fourth ray, I think, is composed of a combination of the first and second rays, particularly. The conflict part is ruled by the first ray and the harmony part by the second. Crashing came a note of music. Well, a note may contain many notes. Is it a chord? Is it a note? It's some representation from another dimension. A note of music, a chord of sound, a combination of notes, of sounds, which, this is very poetic, drove the mixer of sweet sounds to quiet. He had been using the lower type of Venus, which is involved with all kinds of personal magnetism. A little more light on the subject here, perhaps. Sweet sounds is very pretty. What you compose is very pretty. It's very exciting. It's very stimulating. It gets me all worked up emotionally. I feel these passions, blah, blah, blah. These are all personal reactions, and all of a sudden a different type of music. Now the musical imagery is being used, but later the artistic imagery, the painting will be used. Crashing in came a chord, a note of music, a chord of sound, which had the effect on the mixer of sweet sounds to drive him to quiet. What's this? I just saw a marvelous movie about who really wrote the Shakespeare plays. It was called Anonymous. And, Ben Jonson in the Elizabethan days was quite a famous playwright. And his plays were very popular, I think, rivaling Shakespeare's plays in popularity. Well, Ben Jonson in this movie was privy to the idea that the Shakespeare plays were not really written by Shakespeare at all, but Shakespeare was kind of a front who put out these plays, being paid for it, of a nobleman. His name was de Vere, I think. It was Edward de Vere. I may be getting the name wrong, but anyway, Jonson was first called in. we're in the fourth ray language here, okay? Johnson was first called in by the nobleman to say, will you be the front for my plays? Will you publish my plays under your name? Because I cannot possibly do so due to my position, my status in the court, and so forth. It would not be seemly. But Johnson refused, being a strong playwright and wanting to do his own thing and having no idea of the talent that this nobleman really had. And then there's some scenes, a scene in which Henry V is being enacted, some of the great oratory of Henry V at the Battle of Agincourt, and Johnson looks away from the stage as this magnificent poetry is being resounded, and he looks up at the nobleman who's up in the boxes, almost mouthing the words as they occur, and he realizes that a great force has come to the stage, something higher than he had ever conceived, and his admiration only grows as the years go by, until at the very end, as Edward de Vere, is that his name, as the nobleman is becoming ill and can no longer write, he gives Johnson all of his plays to make sure that they are in fact performed and published, which Johnson considers by that time a sacred duty. And he says to the man, he says, full of admiration, he says, you are the soul of our age. Such a touching moment it is. So, oh, it just takes your breath away, the realization that he has. Because in a way he compares his own quite good plays to the majesty of what we would call the Shakespearean poetry of these dramas. And it's a bit, there's an analogy here, because crashing came a note of music which drove the mixture of sweet sounds to quiet. Johnson here, in the language of poetry and the language that is used to convey drama in the plays, that language is equivalent to the sweet sounds, and it ends. He's driven to quiet. His own efforts stop as he has complete appreciation for the grandeur of what Edward de Vere is creating. So there's an analogy there, and I was struck by it. So the mixer, his sounds died out within the sound. It makes, when you think about the sound, you think about the sound of the monad. You think about the great fourth ray monad that's coming in now. The fourth ray is coming in according to its monadic aspect, the Tibetan tells us. But when the word sound is used, it is related to a higher type of source, a monadic source particularly. And now we're talking about God. We're up on the monadic plane, and only the great chord of God was heard, which is a complex chord including all things, a sort of the synthesis of all notes within creation. So this is a huge perception, a perception that comes not only from the soul, but from even higher, from triadal levels, and maybe even from monadic levels. And it is so impressive that there is no choice for the mixer but to be quiet and allow his own pretty, pleasant, agreeable sounds to die away in the presence of this immense grandeur of God's music, the great chord of God. So a destruction has occurred. His own creation is destroyed by the presence of the great sound, just the way the light shines in upon the carpet, and the ugliness is thus revealed, although he is told that he must destroy the carpet, and well, here the mixer of sweet sounds is told he must create again. And obviously the second ray type undertakes a deeper search of which he is eminently capable, but it's not going to be underground. It's going to be from the vantage point of the Hall of Wisdom upon a hill, which is at least a more elevated state of consciousness. So now we go to the imagery not of music and sound, but of the visual arts. A flood of light poured in. This is the light of the higher planes. because he has succeeded in contacting these higher planes. And all of the colors from the pictures that he painted, which he hoped others would like, they fade out. I've had that experience. Long ago at Thanksgiving, I've told the story. I was watching television and my color television at the time. And my aunt was a great photography buff, and she turned on the floodlights in order to get some moving pictures of the family that was there. And all of a sudden, the screen went blank. All the color on the lesser screen went blank because the intensity of the floodlights was so strong that it obliterated the lesser light in color coming from the TV screen. So I had a visual analogy of this process. These colors faded out. They seemed like nothing. They seemed pale. A great light is pouring in from higher levels, from the area of the divine, the same area from which the divine chord of God came. The divine light pours in. So all of his creations, what are they? They are as nothing. Around him, naught but darkness could be seen. He has no interest anymore in the kinds of visions and scenes and sensory impressions and so forth, which used to captivate him and which he used to mix into art. It's just darkness. The usual world to which he responded has been obliterated by the great light and by the great chord of God. But there's always hope on this bipolar experience, which is so common to the fourth ray. The pairs of opposites are always found yet in the distance, and it is yet a distance from where he now stands in his development, yet in the distance loomed the light of God. So even though he feels a personal devastation and all his products are as nothing, his creations are as nothing. It's a bit like the weaver, the carpet is ugly, it says nothing. The knowledge of the scholar is as nothing. And even, I suppose, the garden of the original gardener seems poor in comparison. Good thing it was destroyed compared with the later garden, which really reflects the pattern and purpose of the life process. So at least the light of God is looming in the distance, and it will at least give some hope, some attraction to the mixer. What's he to do now? So he stood between his nether darkness, the darkness down below where he is. He's not in that high state of consciousness, but he's aware of something, and he's looking towards the blinding light. And what an incredible fourth-ray contrast between light and dark. I suppose of all the rays, the fourth ray appreciates contrast the most. And he is now subjected to the contrast. He realizes the darkened chamber in which he has lived and in which he has created. And all of his creativity is as darkness. There's no notes, there's no sounds, there's no colors, there's no forms, only the awareness of the blinding light, which is pregnant, I'm sure, with divine revelation. And now he looks around, and all of the things that delighted him so much, his world in ruins, lay around. He feels so lost, without confidence, so incapable. He thought of himself as quite a creator. He enjoyed his creativity. His creativity attracted his friends to him and those who admired his work and who were pleased by everything he did, and he enjoyed their company because of the love of being loved and the love of being appreciated and the blending of his creations with his lower ego. And now there's nothing there. He's no longer creating. He no longer has that kind of personal magnetism because he's so discontent, and he hides his art. He doesn't show it anymore. He doesn't show his music. He doesn't want it to be heard or seen. And all of those who were attracted to it for personal purposes, they are gone, and the pleasant society is gone. I once sang a song, it was actually written by Henry VIII, because, he was a man of accomplishment in many respects, and This was some kind of madrigal, and it was a pastime with good company. So live and love, and so loved I. Something like that. So love I. It's all. Henry VIII was a very fourth-rate character and full of contradictions. And he's talking about all of the uh, attractive society that he would frequent and stimulate, the kind of people he wanted to be surrounded with who would admire him, but now they're all gone. Instead of harmony, which he had in a personal sense, but now the great chord has made that impossible. Instead of harmony, there was dissonance. Dissonance between that which God is in the light, between the great chord of God and what he has created. Just an unbearable existential dissonance when you compare divinity to the early products of personal man. Instead of beauty, and he had created it, because he could sense, realize the unseen beauty of the world, and he could bring some of that through, even though if for just personal purposes, instead of beauty there was found the darkness of the grave. And no one can go into a good depression like a fourth-ray type. I think when I wrote my Tapestry of the Gods, I was playing with the sixth and fourth rays when I looked at the personalities of Hitler and of Churchill. I think I got them reversed. The way I look at it now, although there was plenty of fourth-ray in Hitler with his Taurus, and I think fourth-ray mind, I think he was essentially a sixth-ray fanatical personality. And when I looked at the stirring oratory of Churchill, I thought of the sixth ray. Yes, he was a Sagittarius, which brings in more of the sixth ray than any other sign at this time. But I think Churchill was actually the fourth ray personality with the sixth ray astral body. He had what's called that black dog, the black dog of depression. And he would fall into these deep, deep depressions when realizing the forces ranged against him and against true civilization. So this is the indication of the depression, the profound depression of which the fourth ray type is capable. In some ways, a highly suicidal type, because the conflicts are felt so deeply. Beauty can pierce one like a pain. This is the raw experience produced by the friction between the pairs of opposites. But there is salvation, okay? Something good will come of this. Divinity has intervened. It has made the proud creator feel a little bit like a worm, a little bit like a non-entity. This happens in every case. There is the conceit is pricked, and the individual is reduced to his proper stature in the face of divinity, and this is such a overwhelming experience of worthlessness at first. But remember that the divine is in all, and when we pull forth the divine from ourselves and build upon it for the right motive, we will express the very divinity against which we retreated when it was first revealed to us. So it's the voice again, and this is the voice of the higher powers, the voice of the soul, the voice of the master, but particularly the voice of the soul, encouraging a major reorientation as one disengages through detachment from the lower preoccupations. The voice then chanted forth these words. There's some rhythmic, mantric, magical quality to that which the voice says. It oftentimes appears in a chant, a kind of an incantation, which is sure to arrest the attention of the lower personality. The voice then chanted forth these words: "Create again, my child." Well, a new activity has to be undertaken. For the third ray, it was to weave again, but weave in the light of day, weave as you see the plan. Do it again, do it again. And when Master Moria said to the weaver who brought him the almost perfect but not quite perfect carpet, weave it again. So the voice then chanted forth these words: "Create again, my child." And here we have the idea that the child within us, like the Leo, within us is the true creator. The creativity of childlikeness with full trust in divinity. And because the word my child is used, we know the voice is coming from a higher source, from the solar angel, from something that can see the true condition of the lower human being and its present state. So there is a childlike creativity which is evoked here and which is very honest and very trusting in the divine. Madame Blavatsky tells us about how early man sensed the solar angel within him and had a great love and trust for this being inherent and immanent within his nature. Create again, my child, and do all the things you do. Build and paint and blend the tones of beauty. You see what a mixture that sentence is. It's got architecture, it's got painting, it has music, it has sound. It's demonstrating the idea of the mixer in just one sentence. But this time, what is your motive? This time, for the world and not thyself. And this could be applied to all these laws of repulse. The garden for the gardener was for himself. The learning of the scholar was for his own self-satisfaction. The carpet woven by the weaver was according to his own desire and his own pleasure. And the music that was created here has such a strong personal element at first. I take and mix and blend. I bring together that which I desire. I harmonize the whole. These sounds are pleasing to me. They are not necessarily pleasing in the light of the higher being. So the consciousness has been expanded, and it's not the motive behind the creativity is for the uplift of the world, and there are inspiring sources to be drawn upon which will reveal that which will inspire the world and uplift others. It's, you know the difference when you hear strictly personal music that just hits you in the solar plexus, and it's okay for a certain stage of consciousness in which we've all been at some time or other, but it just doesn't lift above the solar plexus. And when there is music which takes you into the heart, or takes you into the higher mental appreciation. You compare like some popular songs with a masterpiece of Bach, and the centers involved are all altogether different. So here is Taurus and Venus building and painting, and the blending of the fourth ray, and the aesthetic merging of the tones. It's all beautiful, yes, but the motive is for the beautification of the world, for the harmonization of humanity, and not to attract liking and admiration for one's little impermanent and really unreal self. The soul has clarified this, and the person no longer has that lower sense of identity. That's really such an important thing. By the time God has finished his work, so to speak, in the law of repulse, that divine intervention, the person has a different sense of identity and a sense of a much larger world with which there was dissonance at first, but now comes harmonization with the larger revealed world. So painful, the revelation at first, but so uplifting eventually when the personality, the disciple in the lower worlds, can harmonize all of his efforts and consciousness with this larger perception. And so there is a change and an expansion of who the individual thinks he is. He enters into the soul, he becomes the soul, he becomes more, he becomes even the world itself gradually, working towards the third initiation. And these laws of repulse really, of course, are taking place before the third initiation. It's a major detachment and reorientation, isn't it? So create again, do it again. We're going to see that over and over again. Stop what you were doing and and do something related, but do it better and for a higher and different motive. Create again, my child, and build and paint and blend the tones of beauty, but this time for the larger sphere in which you find yourself a part, because you now are responsive to the soul and not to thy little self. Take thy eyes off thy little self and its personal preferences and have a higher sense of values as you create your music, your painting, your art, your creation, whatever it may be. It will be a higher type of creation because your mind is focused meditatively on a higher type of beauty. DK emphasizes how the artist has to learn really to meditate and not just express his own personal feeling. Nothing wrong with that at a certain stage, but one outgrows that when the sensitivity makes it possible to hear the great divine sounds and see the great light and the great archetypal images. Then one changes one's mode of creativity. So the mixer, like so many of the others, the mixer started then his work anew with a fresh inspiration. That's the thing about creativity. It's always possible to feel a new creative impulse, a new heartening, a new hope, and settle down to work again. And this time, that which is created will be recognized by humanity as of real and lasting value. You know how it is with popular songs, they come and go. Now that we have recordings and radio and the media and so forth, popular songs which would have faded long ago are still with us, but you get the sense that they spoke to their particular generation for a short time. They were number one on the chart, let's say, for a short time and then replaced by something else. But a great masterwork of art, you know, the old saying, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. They do endure. Whether forever, we do not know, but the earth itself is an intended thing of beauty, and it's going to last a very long time because it is the artistic product of the planetary logos and not merely of a man. So let's read this one more time, getting the sense of the whole process and seeing the degree to which you identify with it. The direction of Ray 4. I take and mix and blend. I bring together that which I desire. I harmonize the whole. Thus spoke the mixer as he stood within his darkened chamber. I realize the unseen beauty of the world. Color I know and sound I know. I hear the music of the spheres, and note on note and chord on chord, they speak their thoughts to me. The voices which I hear intrigue and draw me, and with the sources of these sounds I seek to work. I seek to paint and blend the pigments needed. I must create the music which will draw to me those who like the pictures which I make, the colors which I blend, the music which I can evoke. Me they will therefore like, and me they will adore. But crashing came a note of music, a chord of sound, which drove the mixer of sweet sounds to quiet. His sounds died out within the sound, and only the great chord of God was heard. A flood of light poured in. His colors faded out. Around him naught but darkness could be seen. Yet in the distance loomed the light of God. He stood between his nether darkness and the blinding light. His world in ruins lay around. His friends were gone. Instead of harmony, there was dissonance. Instead of beauty, there was found the darkness of the grave. Whoops. Okay. The word, the voice then chanted forth these words. Create again, my child, and build and paint and blend the tones of beauty, but this time for the world and not thyself. The mixer started then his work anew and worked again. So maybe at the place where we find ourselves, maybe not quite having detached from the three lower worlds, maybe needing to rededicate all of our powers to a higher divine type of creativity or representation, we will find these stanzas of general use according to our soul ray. Okay, friends, let us close here with an Om. And then we will move on to the fifth law of repulse, the direction of ray 5. Master DK, through the Old Commentary, has given us some amazing stanzas which have great applicability to the spiritualization of our lives. So let us do our best to understand them and to apply them as and where needed. They are great tools for bringing us into a higher state of spiritual awareness and effectiveness. Okay, we will move on to Ray 5.